Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. We're starting the webinar now. Thanks for your patience. My name is Kamal Kumlin. I'm your host today for our monthly webinar, Dr. Jaspersoft Office Hours, that happens every Thursday, every second Thursday of the month. With me today, we have Badr Draifi, the other host of Dr. Jasper. And we have Jake Brown as the presenter and guest presenter for the technical topic of today. So the topic of today is JasperQL, which is a new language that we have introduced in Jaspersoft 7.8 to basically run queries on domains in Studio reports, so in kind of pixel perfect reports. So Jake will go through that topic with you. Before we get into that, I just wanted to mention our next session that will be hosted by Badr. So basically, it's a very popular topic. We get a lot of questions from customers on Docker and Kubernetes deployment. So we have some cloud options out there, but it's important that we, really clarify what are the best, the best practices for deploying on premise. So that gives you a kind of a good starting point also then for the cloud, or if you just deploy on premise. So, please join us next month on July 8th for that topic. And I think we can now get into our topic for today. So Jake, if you wanna take it from me.
Yeah, thanks, Kamal. As Kamal mentioned, my name is Jake Brown. I'm a senior customer success architect here with the TIBCO team. And we're going to go over a somewhat new feature today called JasperQL, which essentially allows you to create pixel perfect reports off of domains made available in your Jaspersoft server. So real quick, high-level overview of our agenda here today. We're going to do a quick overview of Jaspersoft QL, or JasperQL rather. We're going to go through a typical use case, although there could be many. We'll go through some common ones here. We're going to go over the legacy domain language, so the default scripting domain language that was made available to you before JasperQL and is still available. We'll do a quick comparison of the JasperQL versus the legacy domain language just mentioned. And then last but not least, we will jump into a quick demo of JasperQL and possibly some comparison there with the legacy. Go ahead and go to the next next slide, please, Kamal.
Sure, Jake. I just wanted to add a quick thing that I forgot to mention is that, of course, if you guys have questions at any point, please use the Q&A button or section of the webinar. There's also a chat element, but please use the Q&A and we'll answer them either, on the spot if we can, Badr and I, or at the end of the demo. Jake and ourselves will answer those questions directly. Thanks, Jake. Oops.
Thanks for that, Kamal.
That was a no.
Oh, looks like you clicked one of the links.
Yeah, sorry. Okay.
No worries.
Let's start again. Okay, can you see the overview?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thanks.
So quick overview of JasperQL. So it's a query language that's JSON-based as far as the syntax for how you define the query to go fetch data from your domain. And as we mentioned a few minutes ago, these domains are already existing on your Jaspersoft report server. So it's essentially just a different syntax and different technology to go ahead and pull this data from the existing domains. You're able to define your query interactively through a UI. So this is going to be very similar to the query designer in the dataset and query dialog or the new report dialog. Even in the SQL based data sources, you do still have a designer portion of it, although it might be less utilized considering most of our customers who are using JDBC based data sources are familiar with writing queries. So this is going to be mostly a UI design feature. There is a text portion of it, but we generally recommend you don't edit it the text way, as it can get a little bit messy at times. So as a follow-up, but as well as dragging and dropping your fields from your domain, you're also able to create expressions and other click events in the UI designer that give you a bit more functionality than what the legacy domain query designer allowed you to do. And then lastly, we do have some more information that'll be made available to you when these slides are made available. So this is just a URL essentially out to the user guide for Jaspersoft Studio. This particular chapter covers working with domains in Studio in general, but there's a good portion of that chapter that's dedicated towards the JasperQL usage. I think we're ready for the next slide. Kamal, could we go to the next slide, please?
Oh yeah, I did went to use cases. Is it not? Can you not see it? I'm on the use cases slide.
I don't know if possibly Kamal had to.
But can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Kamal. If you can go back one slide, Kamal.
Okay. So overview and then use cases. Can you see it now? Okay, I'll start sharing again. Maybe there's a problem there. Just 1 second. Sometimes.
I think we lost Jake.
Can you see use cases now?
I can see it, but I think we lost Jake because I think he has some internet connection issues. He's not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's not connected anymore.
Okay, no problem. We'll give it a moment for Jake to reconnect. So apologies, everyone. You know, technical issues sometimes happen. So yeah, we'll give it a 30 seconds or 1 minute for Jane to reconnect.
All right, I think he's joining now. I think he's back.
Hey, Batter. Jake here. I'm not sure if my connection temporarily dropped, but I was asking for the next slide. And I'm not quite sure when exactly the audience lost me.
No worries. So we're can you see the use cases slide now?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Sorry about that. So for JasperQL, a typical use case or a typical request for this might look something like this. You have an administrator over your Jaspersoft server who's responsible for creating the domains. And the reason for the creation of these domains is to enable your end users to have a self-service level of support where they can create reports on their own, or ad hoc views rather, to assist themselves to get the reports and the data that they need, but they're not given any direct database access. And this could be for a number of reasons, either for security reasons or just because the report developers in this case are not well versed in SQL or their data per se. So a lot of the times, with the ad hoc view with customers, one of the biggest challenges we run into is the designer is fairly limited, very limited compared to Jaspersoft Studio, because Jaspersoft Studio is more of a pixel perfect based report designer. So you may run into a case where you have limited access to a database and you need to develop more of a pixel perfect report than an ad hoc view. So that kind of summarizes this particular use case, and the following 2 bullet points kind of wrap up what I've just said. Limited access to the database, whether that be knowledge or security, and domain utilization through JasperQL will help you with that. And the Jaspersoft Studio end of it will provide you with a more customizable pixel perfect report development experience. So that's a typical use case. I think we're ready for the next slide.
Yeah, I changed it. Can you see it?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I Must
No
have
worries.
missed that. So the legacy domain language, we'll talk quickly about that. So as I mentioned more towards the beginning of our presentation here, it uses a proprietary language, query language to operate, to whereas the new JasperQL method is going to use a JSON-based approach. So we're going to be using something that's standardized within the industry versus something that was a bit more proprietary to how our domains functioned previously. The good news is for those of you who maybe still plan to use the old legacy query as well, is it's still supported in the newer versions of our product. However, us at TIBCO and Jaspersoft do recommend going forward that you use the JasperQL designer for all of your new reports. With that being said, for those of you on the call who have been implementing this legacy domain language previously, because the query languages are so different from one another, unfortunately, it's not something that can be ported over easily without recreation. Now, we might be able to look into some sort of scripting tool eventually down the road that might assist you with something like that. But for right now, our recommendation is to either utilize the old domain language for those old reports or convert them to the JasperQL. The link at the bottom there is just going to be some reference documentation, again, with version 7.5 and earlier, before JasperQL was the default language behind these domain-based data sources. But there is a reference there, again, working with domains, but this one in particular is geared more towards the legacy approach as opposed to the new JasperQL approach. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide. There we go. So JasperQL versus legacy. So we've gone over some of the differences here. So this will just be mostly a highlight or a re-review in a lot of ways. So again, JasperQL uses JSON versus legacy is using a proprietary query language. The JasperQL route supports many more advanced features from your query dialog itself. Some examples of this include aggregation, filtering, the ability to alias, and then even the ability to use DOM-EL functions to create calculated fields similar to how you do inside of your domains. And then the last bullet point there, JasperQL is only existing in version 7.8 and higher or later of JasperReport Server. All right. So we're going to do probably a rather quick demo here today. So there's a couple of things that I want to kind of show and prove out throughout this demo. The first one being that we're going to sample an existing JRXML report that uses a JDBC query. So we're not going to do much with this report. We're going to start just by viewing the report and noticing that it is using a query, and then executing the report just as a quick sample to prove it out. From there, I plan on taking an existing copy of this report and utilizing it and changing it to use JasperQL and a domain rather than a query. So there will be a small amount of rework that we do to get that done. We'll start by creating the domain data adapter. We'll then work on converting it from a query over to the JasperQL syntax, and then we'll test and execute the report.
Sounds great, Jake. So just a reminder for everyone to please ask questions on the Q&A, and we'll try to answer them, right after the demo, so that everyone can hear and also in the recording. So I'll stop the sharing. So up to you, Jake, if you want to start sharing your screen.
Yeah. All right. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I have here is I have a running 7.9 version of Jaspersoft Server on my system. And I have my Postgres database running with my Food Mart sample data that TIBCO provides. So I will go over here to Studio, and I'll just point out a few things here in my environment for some context first. So something that I've already done and we can cover very quickly is the first thing I'm going to need to do to enable this is I'm going to have a JasperReport server available in my repository explorer. So forgive me ahead of time if we do have some newer Studio users in here and some of this is a little bit confusing to you or new. We'll get you up to speed with some Studio training, or there are resources available for that, but I'm going to go through this as best as I can. So normally you would just go create a Jaspersoft server. You would give an appropriate name. The setup here is very easy. It's just a matter of giving it the URL to your Jaspersoft server and then giving it some authentication credentials. If you're using SSO and not a super user or internal admin account, you do have some advanced settings that will help you set that up. However, I already have this set up for my 7.9 server that I just pointed out. The next thing you'll want to do before you get started is you'll want to make a domain-based data source. And the way that we do that is by just creating a data adapter here. And then in this particular case, the data adapter type that you want to select is actually Jaspersoft server. So I actually already have one created, but I'm just going to walk the audience here through this. So it's going to have you pick a server. So this is fairly easy for me since I only have one defined, but otherwise you'd get a list of your servers there. It's going to copy the credentials from that as well for you and try to be helpful. And then the last thing is it wants the URL behind your data source. And in this case, we are just going to point it to a domain that I know exists. So if we go over into the samples and into the domain, you can see that we've got a couple of Supermart domains here. I already have mine ready, but if we go and test that out, we can see that since Jaspersoft server is running, we have a successful connection out to our domain there. All right, and then really quickly, we also have the JDBC Food Mart already pre-configured and set up and ready to go. So I'm going to start with this report here. So if I go to do a quick preview of this report, it might take a few seconds to run since we're dealing with a fairly large data set here. But you can see that this is, for anyone who's worked with our Food Mart sample data before, you're probably going to be well familiar with some of the product names and some of the store names and other things associated with this data. But this is essentially just a store sales, store information type report that we're getting from Food Mart. So if we go and look at this, we're not using any sub data sets here. So I'm going to be working entirely in the main reports data set and query dialog here. But if I go to that, you can see that we're using a fairly simple query with many joins, but we're going out and getting a handful of fields and then displaying them in the table. So we've verified that this is using a SQL query and that it is producing us results. So our next step is to now convert this using JasperQL. So to do that, I am going to start, I already have this pasted into another notepad file, but just to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Oops, that was actually already there for me. So this is already there. And I'm just going to delete the query out of here. And rather than going over to my JDBC-based Food Mart connection, I am going to go over to the Supermart domain that I've already established. Now, one other thing I'm going to have to do here, the language is still going to default to whatever it was when this report was first created. So I need to go over here and switch it to JasperQL. As you can see, it now gives me a list of domains on that server to pick from. I'm going to pick the Supermart domain, which is where this is pointing anyway. And now I need to go ahead and start replacing my fields. So I'm going to move my window down just slightly so I can see the names of these fields a bit easier when I go to pick them. But what I do know just from knowing my data is that I am going to need to grab the city from the region here. So I'm going to click and drag this up into the fields. I need a product name, which I just happen to know exists inside of the products island here. So I'm going to drag the product name over. I need my store name. The date we are actually going to skip just for the purposes of this demo. And then lastly, we need the store sales, store cost, and unit sales. And it looks like unit sales has been duplicated there. So I'm just going to take one of them out. So we now have these three fields that we're going to add as well. Now, if we do a read fields here, what's more than likely going to happen is, and if we go to refresh this data, you can see that we're getting the ID from the domain itself. And if you look at our report here, we're already using field names that are defined and a bit easier to read. So what we can do is JasperQL has the ability to right-click and do certain functions with these fields, to whereas the existing domain, legacy domain query language did not. You basically had no additional functionality or any right-click options. So what we're going to do is we're just going to alias it by using this as here. So I believe we're just lowercase city is what we're looking for. And I'm just going to quickly go through and alias all of these fields as needed.
By the way, Jake, as you do that, I just wanted to add that this type of aliasing, as far as I know, can be done also at the domain level if we want to when you kind of set labels on the fields in the domain design. So that's just wanted to mention that's also an option, so that you might not have to repeat that for every report, right? So that,
right. Yep. And that's a really good point, Kamal. In most domain cases, especially if you have a wider user base, you are going to probably have localization for a lot of this. And some of these aliases already defined. So if I do a read fields again and then refresh my data preview here, you can see that I have appropriate named fields now from the report. So I'm going to click OK here, and I'm going to go preview the report and see if it executes. And it does. And we're going to get the same result set with many pages here, but you can see we've essentially replicated this same report that started with SQL. Now, I understand that the use case we followed here may not be a common one where you need to take SQL out and convert it to a domain-based report. However, we wanted to take a report that already had some formatting and some logic to it and show you just how easy it is on a report this size to make that transition. So if you're starting from new, it's probably going to be even less, more report design and less converting. So a few other things, and we probably won't get too deep into some of these examples because we could probably schedule a whole nother session for things like DOMIL and some of the other functionality in here. But some other things that you do have available to you. So for example, let's say that we want to filter on a particular store. It's as easy as clicking and dragging the field into the filters group there. We're just going to say in this case equals, and for store name, I'm going to say if it equals store 19. I'll go over to my data preview to prove that out. And you can see that we're now filtered down to store 19. Go ahead and take this out. And you can see that the data set and query dialog here also gives us the ability to do a group by. Now, I'm not going to go through and change these fields like I would need to get this group by to actually present the data the way that I'd like to. But the group by is also another thing that you can do just by clicking and dragging from one of the fields. Now, with the existing legacy, you would have to go and create groups within the Jasper report itself instead of inside of the query designer. So that's an advantage that you have over the legacy domain designer. Order by, again, all of this stuff, one way or another, you could have done it with the domain. It would have taken you a little bit longer, and it would have been in this dialog and quite this seamless. And then the limiter is also something that has been added. So really quickly, I'll just go to show you. You do have the ability as well to write DOM-EL functions, and I don't have one ready for you, but for example, you could, if I go over to the region info again, I could right click on city here, and I could say I want to create a calculated field off of city, and it's going to give me this, what is your DOM-EL function, and what would you like to alias it as? So in a situation like this, you could make a location field, and I could just say that my function here is to concat city and state, and then just alias that as location. So now I do have this field ready and available to me. Now, one thing, and I probably could have included this in the slide, and this is a note from me to pass along to our product development team. I do not believe it is going to let me reference the alias here. I believe it's going to expect an actual ID identifier similar to this, this ID we're looking at right here. So I'm going to do a read fields real quick and then preview that. But that's one feedback item that I have is we need something within the DOM-EL designer there to help you a little bit more with that. But I just wanted to show that you guys can create these calculated fields with this new feature. And I think that is going to about do it for our demonstration today, Kamal, unless if there's something you can think that I missed.
No, absolutely. That's great. Thanks very much, Jake. I just before you close this, I don't see any questions, and Butter, correct me if I missed anything, but from the attendees. But I put a link in the chat of Zoom, Jake, and I thought it might be interesting to show. It's about the DOM-EL syntax, because it's
yes.
not everyone knows about it and might not know where to find it.
Just a note, Kamal, we do have a few questions from attendees.
Oh, okay. I'm not seeing them on the list for some reason. So maybe after we just showed this link, I think I don't see the browser, Jake. So I don't know if.
Okay. Would you like me to just read the question?
Oh, no, it was just I just wanted to show that link that I sent you very briefly so that everyone knows where it is. I can't see the browser at the moment in your screen. Oh yeah, I can see it now. Perfect. I just wanted to show this because not everyone might be familiar with that and syntax. And also I wanted to point out that we have a new guide, which, before it used to be part of the server user guide, but now we have a separate guide specifically for domains. If you see the top kind of title of the document is JasperReport Server Data Management Using Domains. So that's kind of a newer guide that we released, I believe, from either 7.5 or 7.8, but not everyone might be aware of that. So I just wanted to show it. And so before we go into the question, quick question from me, Jake, in terms of the aggregation, I know it's a bit unscripted, but I'm wondering if we could maybe show briefly, because I think it's a very kind of important use case. I was wondering if we could show, if we could, for example, aggregate group by city and, well, you would have to aggregate by city, product name, and store name, because in that case, then the numerical kind of store sales, etc., you could see like a sum or something like that. It's something that we could do maybe in a short time, or is that? I mean, we could give it a go maybe, but I don't want to take too long for this part as well.
Sure. We could do that. What I could do is just slightly modify the report to really only use a store name, and then could sum the rest of these.
Yeah, that'll be cool. So, Badr, how many questions do we have from the attendees?
So far, we do have 4 questions.
4 questions. Okay. Well, we'll just spend like 1 minute on this if we manage, just to, because I think it can be a nice so you add in the new fields, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so this is, you right click
Perfect.
on the field and there's an aggregate function. It then gives
perfect.
you a list of aggregations based upon the data type. So if this were a string, we wouldn't have sum options, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just go through, create these aggregates really quick. And I'm just going to do sums. Actually, you know what? Yeah, sum. So that should work okay.
Yeah, so sums are good. Sums are good. Careful with the, yeah.
Right, and then I'm just going to take these out since I'm not going to really be using them anymore. Do a read fields and just make sure my data is coming across.
Do you still need you still need a group by, the group by, right? For the store name.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So store name 1.
So it may be the way that this domain island is built, actually, Kamal. So
right. That's true. Yeah.
The best demonstration here.
No, it's fine. I think just to show quickly how generally it's done. So I think it's more than enough so that people can see. Okay, this is how I would do it.
Yeah.
You know, we were not prepared. So as you said, it's probably the domain design. But so I think, Badr, if you want to read out the questions to Jake, and then we can answer them.
Yeah, sure. So we have a question from Melinda Johnson. She said, why not choose JSON?
Well, so we did choose JSON, and I don't know if the question is rather why did we choose JSON. So I have not had a conversation with the engineering team in depth enough about why for JSON, but my assumption, and I'm going to say this is probably a fairly accurate assumption, is because it's a standardized scripting language, to whereas the existing legacy language that we were using was a proprietary thing to Jaspersoft and how our domains were built. So my guess is that another thing they were probably trying to do was to get off of proprietary type scripting languages and to start using something with a better supported standard, which JSON is well supported, as we all know.
Right. Yeah, so we actually do JasperQL actually use JSON. So I think the question was I think she didn't know that we actually do use JSON in our JasperQL. Yeah, but
okay.
we actually do.
And to clarify, JSON is only the, I mean, it's only the syntax for the query itself, right? But
yeah,
it's nothing. I mean, we have other product features to read JSON data. I don't know if that's, you know, the question was in any way related to that, but just to clarify, JSON is a format for, you know, the query once you save it into the report, the JRXML file, but then it's nothing to do with JSON data itself. It's just the syntax of the query itself.
Exactly. A second question from Melinda Johnson too. I have never worked with domains. Can you reference multiple schemas?
Yeah, so there's generally a schema selector from the domain designer. And if I'm recalling correctly, you should be able to select more than a single schema when you go in and design your domain.
As long as the user that is connected of the data source has access to those schemas in the database, then they should be all available. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Third question. What about case statements?
So we're not writing SQL. So a case statement directly in the data set and query dialog is not something you're able to do. However, our DOM-EL functions do support the case syntax. So if you needed to create a field that was based off of a DOM-EL function, you could do that.
Yeah, so we can simulate the same. We can achieve the same result if we do the DOM-EL and do some create a field based on some specific conditions.
That's correct.
Great. Fourth question from Nathan Moore. I quote just
sorry about it. I just want to add the point to that. Again, there's also the possibility to add calculated fields to the domain directly, right? So
Yes.
you don't. I mean, you basically will be using the same syntax, the DOM-EL syntax, but just to clarify that you can add it either in the query directly or in the domain. And obviously, if you add it in the domain, then it's going to be available automatically to all the whoever is writing JasperQL queries or in the ad hoc views, etc.
So yes, exactly. So this will be like more easier option if you don't have access to the domains, or if you need some time to contact the team responsible administrators for domains. So you can just do it directly from your local machine, from your studio.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the first question from Nathan, just to verify, can we mix traditional parameters into JasperQL queries?
To the best of my knowledge, at this point, no. And if I'm hoping that this is something that'll change, or something that we could add quickly. But let me I'll share my screen again really quick to demo that out. So when you go into the filters here, these filters are working similar to how filters work inside of the ad hoc designer. But what I've done just for a test here is I've created a store parameter, and I've given it a default value of store 19. And as you can see here, when I go to configure this filter, it's treating this as a string literal instead of allowing me to reference a parameter. Now, the other thing I could try really quick, even though I don't believe that this is going to work, but this is the normal syntax within JRXML and how to reference parameters. So if it was going to work, this would do it. But as you can see, it's treating it as a text literal. So it looks like the ability to integrate the traditional JRXML parameters at this point in time is fairly limited.
All right. So, but just a question. We finished question from the attendees, and I have a question related to what Nalan just asked. So when we do a parameter in that JasperQL filter, as you did, so we still have the option to specify that parameter if we want it to be prompted to the user, so the user can enter his own data and filter on the report, right?
Based on what I'm seeing here, no. It looks like this is not selected as promptable. So the filters are done inside the query designer itself. So that might be another something that we need to take some feedback on and go back to our product development team with.
Got it. Thank you. So we have a new question coming up from Melinda. Can you click on the parameters tab of the query designer or edit the source to remove the single quotes?
Yeah, I believe so. You might have to reiterate the question for me, and I'll share my screen again here. But I'm on the parameters tab, and what was the second part of those?
Can you click on the parameters tab of the query designer or edit the source to remove the single quotes?
Oh, the single. Oh, I see what they're saying. So they're saying, hey, can you?
So Jake, I think I can help there. I was looking at the documentation. So if you add the filter again, I'll show you. It's not very obvious, so it's actually a very good question. If you add the filter and so just pick, yeah. So now if you right click on where you see some value there, just right click there.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, it's you can pick a field or a parameter from there. Unfortunately,
cool.
it's not very obvious from the UI, but now we know.
Yeah.
Okay, so that answers my question also, and Nathan's question, that you can have parameters inside your domain-based report with JasperQL.
Yes, it appears.
So in this case,
way.
it's obviously going to be store name equals store name, but you could use a parameter as well. Just pick right click on the field, and
yeah,
that one that you picked before, right?
Yeah.
A parameter, yeah, it would be a parameter. Yeah,
It'd be a parameter as well, right? Yeah. Okay.
instead of a literal, and then you pick the store parameter.
Yeah.
It can be even an input control from the repository, by the way. But,
Right.
let's not get into that. Just to show the parameter, and then now yeah, that's the syntax there. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So if I refresh this, I'm guessing that I'm going to, okay,
Store
yeah,
19.
it's defaulted to store 19. Okay. Very good. All right, cool. So if I go and change this just for fun here, 12. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Kamal.
No worries.
We actually do also have a new question, which is actually in the chat. So just a reminder, if you could guys use the question and answer tab, because we don't monitor the chat on the Zoom. So fortunately, I could see this question. So I quote, can you show the chosen parameters value in the report subtitle or in the report or sub-report title?
Yeah, so that's just a report design aspect, which we didn't really cover today. But if you have a parameter, where did my store parameter go? Okay, well, I'll just add one real quick. But let's just say I create a test param here. So those parameters can just go into in this case, the title band, or wherever you want to place it. Oops, I don't know if I did that right. So now your parameter and whatever value is going to be in that title band. You can't see it right now because we've got some overlapping going on. But yeah, you are able to display what parameters are selected based on how you design the report.
Yeah, and this is actually it's not related to JasperQL. This is more a function of the studio, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we do have one other question. Can you create nested parameters filters, have parameters values, limit the selection of parameters value for the second filter?
So I don't know what the functionality is behind cascading with this. And as you can see, we really didn't even have a UI because we didn't select an input control. We just created a pretty simple parameter. So I would have to go test that. If the input control itself has already been configured to have cascading functionality, then it should work the same. But that's not something I tested with this before the demo.
I mean, that's again, it's not really related to JasperQL. This is you can do on any reports. When you publish the report, and maybe Jake, we could publish this report briefly just to test it. Again, it's not scripted, but while I explain this, once you publish the report, then you can link it to any input controls that with compatible data types for your parameters. So if you have an input control with let's say a string, and then you can link it to that report if you have a parameter in that report that is a string. And so the cascading input controls is kind of a separate topic, obviously, but it's definitely something you can do. And then in the server, you configure the cascading input control, and then you link it to the report that you published. So I think if you publish this, Jake, just to execute it on the server, we don't have to do the cascading input control right now.
Sure. Yeah. So I was just going to point out that my data source for my repository in this case is obviously the supermart domain. That's really the only thing to notate here. And then if I go out to my server, more than likely going to have to log in. All right. So you can see we're still getting prompted with that parameter, right? So I'm just going to give it store 13. All right, and I believe
we didn't link that parameter
Yep.
to the
Yep.
yeah, so that's
Right.
right.
So,
But just to show the execution, I mean, and of course it's still loading data because there's something like 5,000 pages, I think.
yeah,
So
yeah, it took about 10 seconds probably. Yeah.
that's not too bad. But if you go back into and then edit, right click and edit the report, we can show where the input controls go. But just as a quick thing, it's not really related. Just go back to the repo and right click on the report and edit. And then there's a section controls and resources, and that's where you would link the input controls. You click there on add input controls, and if it's cascading, then it will work.
Yeah,
So
and just to inform you guys, so we do have a lot of much content in the community about cascading filters for Jasper Studio and server. So if you search that on the community, you will find a lot of articles and wikis about that.
Sounds cool.
I think we're done with the questions so far. We don't have any new questions.
Okay, so I think we're done. I'm gonna start briefly the presentation part again, just to show the final slides. So let's see if that works. Share screen. Okay. Do you see the resources page?
I do.
We did. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So just to close out on this, we're gonna basically publish the slides as a PDF there's a page, this page here, Dr. Jasper community page, wiki/Dr. and all the previous presentations and webinars are also there. So you can get the slides, get the links there and everything. And also, if you have any follow-up questions, please, post them on the community, and you can tag them with Dr. Jasper, and we'll try and monitor that and answer you on the topic of today, or for JasperQL or previous topics. And then finally, we have this email, drjaspersoft@tipco.com. You can also email us there if you have any follow-up questions. And other than that, thanks very much for joining today, and I hope this was useful. And again, please remember, on the 8th of July, we have a Docker and Kubernetes session for on-premise deployment. So we'll look forward to see you there. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Kamal. Bye.